doing new things and going to new places and just doing things that sort of like deviate from my usual daily routine. As an autistic person, it's really challenging for me. And I have a recent example that I want to share just to kind of like, I guess, like document my autistic experience, and maybe if anyone can relate to this to help you feel a little bit less alone as well. So for the past like 6 months or so, I've had quite a bit of pain in my like SI joint, and like down through my hip. And it wasn't until like March where I decided, like, you know what, I probably should do something about this because it's not getting better with what I'm doing. And so the first thing that I had to do, of course, was like make an appointment with my primary care doctor, which that in itself is like really overwhelming, and just like it's new. It's something that a new task that I have to do. It's a demand to add to my plate. And so that in itself was kind of overwhelming. And then he referred me to physical therapy, and I started with a physical therapist. Long story short, I feel like it wasn't really helping. The things that he was doing weren't really helpful for my situation with the pain that I was having. And so this leads me to now these past few weeks where I was already like frustrated because I had already like stepped outside of my comfort zone a lot, and I already like did all these new things to try to make it better, and it felt like nothing was working. And I did feel a little bit defeated. And so I was recommended to a new physical therapist. And let me just tell you, like the past like 3 days, like that's all my mind had been focused on, is the appointment that was today that I just had a few hours ago. Like that's all my mind could focus on. Researching everything about that place, researching everything about my hip to make sure that I had an understanding going into it of what I could expect, what questions I should ask, what sort of like red flags I should look out for, especially considering I had already seen a different physical therapist before my experience today. And then to add to that, like I had to call the referral office from my primary care doctor because the referral hadn't been sent yet. And so I had to use like ChatGPT to like help me like formulate like a little bit of a script to kind of like go off of as I made that phone call, because phone calls are really overwhelming for me because just like the pressure to respond quickly, not being able to see the person, and just like the sensory challenge of it, sometimes not being able to hear or make out what they're saying because it's all just audio. So that was challenging. And then comes last night where I started getting like really anxious, really anxious for something that if you just like look at it, if you zoom out, it shouldn't be something that gives you that much anxiety. Like it's just going to an appointment. But for me, like these sort of things are a huge deal. It's a way bigger deal than it seems that it needs to be, but that doesn't mean that it's like necessarily a bad thing. And I'm learning that like this is just how my brain works. I was like almost like feeling kind of like frozen last night. I set up on the bed, I set up my Barabee, like I think it was like a 20 or even like 25-pound weighted blanket that I had on top of me, with my Huggimals weighted plushie on top of me. And I had a hard time like last night doing anything other than like ruminating or like thinking and getting stuck on the appointment that I had today. Like some of it was like the anxiety piece, like what if they're not helpful like the other one? What is the sensory experience going to be like in there? Is it going to be too overstimulating? Am I going to be overstimulated while I'm there? What if this isn't helpful either? So part of it was kind of like the anxiety piece, and then there's like another part to it where like I feel like my autism ties in with it just like being something new and something being out of my routine. Those two things are both like really hard for me, and I'm not really sure why, but I think that this is very common amongst autistic people where we kind of get like stuck in our ways, and we need to be in our ways in order to feel like regulated and to feel grounded. And then when there's any sort of change of plans, or when there is something new that we have to do, or even like something new that we get to do, it still can cause us like to feel really overwhelmed and really dysregulated. I also have like a really like rigid style of thinking, and a lot of times when there's something that like will disrupt that thinking style that I have, maybe it's like a suggestion for something, or it could be like an ask to do something new, anything like that also caused me a lot of overwhelm. So I think it's all like intertwined, and just the way that it feels like my brain like gets so stuck on this path, and then as soon as there's anything that isn't on this path, it's like instant overwhelm, instant like my nervous system like gets like really fired up. And I'm learning also that there are some like healthy coping mechanisms, which I'll share in just a sec, which definitely help. And then also a big piece that I always talk about, and I actually talked about it in my most recent video, is just acceptance of this. Now knowing that I am autistic and understanding like how it affects me, especially with my routine and my rigidity, has been really helpful in me being able to accept moments like these past few days and last night especially, where I'm just like, you know what, this is uncomfortable, and I know it's going to be uncomfortable, and I'll probably be a little bit overwhelmed because it's something new, it's something that I'm not used to, I don't know what to expect. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean that like there's something wrong with me that for the reason that I'm experiencing this. And kind of like this is just the way it is. And that kind of helps me give myself a little bit of grace, having that understanding, and then finding like those healthy coping mechanisms. So for me, when I start to feel that like, how would I like put the feeling into words? When I feel like I guess that sort of like feeling of anxiety, but then like the added piece of just like feeling like really dysregulated in my body, even if it feels like my mind might not necessarily be racing, it does get like really stuck and perseverates on these things. And so for me, like any sort of heaviness or like proprioceptive input really helps me. That might not be as helpful for you, but I know that for me, like I'm a proprioceptive sensory seeker. I like to lift weights at the gym. Sometimes I like to like spin into the walls and like kind of like bounce myself off the walls. But so like last night, like using my weighted blanket, putting my weighted plushie on my chest was really helpful. And then also like trying to let go of some of the demands that I might have. And I know, again, this might not be feasible for everyone. Like we all have life responsibilities. Luckily, when I started feeling this last night, I got pretty much everything done for the day. The only thing left I had to do was cook dinner, which wasn't going to happen last night. So I ordered food, and I let myself order food on DoorDash without feeling guilty about it, because I knew that I need to eat. Eating is healthy for me, but this is the only way I'm going to be able to eat tonight. Some more examples to kind of like help yourself in these situations is like, for me, I need research, I need to understand things, and that's really important for me. But then there comes like a point where that like research starts becoming almost obsessive. And so doing our best to like identify that point. If you're like me and you need to know things and you need to understand things, I think that's totally reasonable. And I do think that's also related to my autism and just the way that my brain works and how I process information. But then there comes a point, like I said, where it's just like information overload and it becomes too much information, and we can easily spiral down that path of like obsessively researching to the point where it's almost like perpetuating the anxiety as opposed to filling our brain with knowledge that is helpful for us. So identifying that place where you're like, okay, I've looked up everything I can, and now I know that at this point, the more that I research, it's only going to keep me perseverating and ruminating. In other words, like getting stuck on this certain topic to the point where it's almost like a cycle where the brain is like, I need that in order to feel at peace. But we kind of have to like almost like distance ourselves from that a little bit and recognize that if I can just take a few minutes to stop myself from doing this, I'll probably feel better overall than if I keep obsessively spiraling. And then I think again, like the biggest thing in these moments is to like just try to give yourself as much grace as possible. Understand that, you know what, this is the way that my brain works. Yeah, it's really frustrating sometimes. I wish it wasn't like this sometimes, but this is the way that it is. And I know what tools I can use to help me. And so I'm going to try those things. And this feeling is temporary because, that's another big thing. Like this feeling is temporary. And I say that because like now, looking back on last night and after going to this physical therapy appointment, I feel like this is actually going to be incredibly helpful for me. He was able to identify some like imbalances, and like my left hip was off balance from my right hip, and so that was causing a lot of the pain in my right side. All of these things were not even like spoken about on my previous physical therapist. So I already feel a lot better. And I have that understanding that last night and this morning, the anxiety wasn't going to last forever, especially now that I did it. I got myself there. I got through the appointment. I took myself for a nice walk in the trees afterwards. And I feel better now, and I feel more hopeful. Like I'm on a path to like actually getting the healing that I need so that I don't have to live with this discomfort and pain for much longer. So I just wanted to like document this and share this because I know that I'm not alone in experiencing these things, and I just wanted to use my example of physical therapy. And this applies to like a lot of things in our lives, because as much as we want and even like need, I would say it's a need for autistic people to have our routines the same for the most part. It really helps us feel regulated and grounded. As much as we want and need that, like the fact of life is that things are always changing. There's always going to be things that come up that will force us to pivot a little bit, to deviate from our comfortable routine. And in these moments, just understanding that even though it is going to feel really hard, it's going to feel really dysregulating, there are some tools to help you, and that these feelings are only temporary.